The Miami Hurricanes have the quarterback in place. They've got the speed and dynamic playmakers on the outside. This team needs to run the football to purely max out the offense and reach that ceiling in 2016. 112th yards per carry last season, FBS football, 118th per game running the football. We bring in Cam Underwood from State of the U to help us sort out the running back situation. Unfortunately, we've got some off-season, off-the-field news, I should say, Cam, involving Mark Walton that just came down April 23rd.
Yeah, good to be back, but tough to start out with this part of the conversation. Mark Walton was a All-American, high school player, reclassified to the class of 2015 so that he could graduate early from high school in his original class. So he, graduated, came to the University of Miami last year, played a lot, played pretty well, a dynamic player, number one on the team on offense, his actual jersey number. But the issue was after spring ball, he got arrested for a DUI, arrested one night, charged with DUI. And so he was suspended indefinitely from the team following that. There was also talk that he was going to be charged with impersonating an officer. That was reported first by WPLG Channel 10 down here in Miami, and then they walked that back. The Miami-Dade police came out and said that that was not the case per se, but they are investigating an incident of police impersonation, and the information they got had the name Mark Walton with it and his phone number associated with it. So as from the media sources out there, the situation seems to be that there was a gentleman who had a run-in with the young lady, kind of pulled her over on the road and everything, and then tried to get her number and said, call me for a date kind of thing, pulled her out of her car or asked her to get out of the car, said that he was a police officer, and then groped her inappropriately. But that was about 33 days in front of the DUI situation. The coincidence, as it seems now, I'm not reporting anything, but then just passing on, was that Mark Walton on his DUI stop was pulled over in front of the home of the young lady who is the alleged victim of the impersonation thing. So it was, 3 o'clock in the morning, you get pulled over in front of her house, and then you have this other incident where she says that there was someone who impersonated an officer, pulled her over, groped her, and then when you link the phone number that she said the guy gave her and Mark Walton's phone number, those happen to be one and the same. I don't know if that is true. I don't know. There's been some speculation by Andy Slater, who's another journalist, that maybe Mark Walton was being set up and somebody gave her the number and said, say this, or, there's a lot going on. So I do know, and we can confirm through all of the journalist sources that are out there who have reported this, that he was pulled over for the DUI, and that is what we're going to operate off of right now. He's still in school. He's still associated with the team as per the University of Miami and a spokesperson, but we do not know what fallout there will be from that. If it happens to be just the DUI and not the impersonating charge or anything like that, then I believe, we're maybe looking at a 2 or 3 game suspension. If the impersonating happens to be the truth, and that is and that is associated with actually Mark Walton, and there was no kind of setup or anything in play, then he will probably no longer be associated with the University of Miami football program. So, a lot going on, and we're still just waiting to see what the end result is going to be. But going forward with the position preview, we're going to talk about the position group with and without Mark Walton, because at this point we really don't know. And even if he still is on the roster, it's going to be at least a couple of games that we would be without him because of the DUI.
Yeah, it's quite a bit to sort out, it sounds like, and hopefully justice is served, of course. At the same time, it's easy for the public to assume guilt, but we found out in the case of Dalvin Cook at Florida State, the first reports aren't necessarily the most accurate. So Dalvin Cook was innocent. Walton only averaged 3.5 yards per carry. I think that speaks more to the offensive line. Anybody that saw him play and score 10 touchdowns, and especially in the bowl game against Washington State, knows that he's probably got the most potential out of these running backs. You can talk about Walton's skills, Cam, for us. Also, Gus the Bus is back this year after being injured in 2015 after a nice 2014. Joe Yearby as well after a 1,000-yard campaign and 8 total touchdowns. Your assessment of the running back situation?
Yeah, so at the top right there, I do believe that Mark Walton is the most talented running back. He had 10 total touchdowns last year, but I believe he had 5 or 6 touchdowns called back, both rushing and receiving. He's a dynamic player. Just plain and simple. I said this when he was a recruit, talking to some people down here in Miami-Dade County who watched him play since he was an Optimist. They said from day one of him putting on pads, he was the best player on the field, no matter who was out there. And you're talking other guys who are, playing in big-time schools who were older than him, all sharing the field. From day one, they said, every time I saw Mark Walton, he was the best player on the field. And we saw glimpses of that as a freshman. So, if he's able to, come back and, develop physically and everything, I think that he could be that back who really takes a step forward in the rotation. He was recruited very heavily by Thomas Brown and Mark Richt to go to Georgia when he was a recruit coming out of high school. So when that staff comes over and they're looking at the roster, they say, hey, this is a kid that we wanted. This kid we fought really hard for and lost on. And now we change locations and he's right here. That's like, in the preview video for quarterbacks, so I said, you come and you have Brad Kaya there and everything is made. They come over, they have a Mark Walton. Boom. Okay, I know what I can do with him. This is what we talked about doing with him. Let's go. And with the tradition of excellence that both Mark Richt has had at Georgia and then Thomas Brown, the position coach, had when he coached Melvin Gordon at Wisconsin and then the group at Georgia last year, I mean, they couldn't be happier with a player of that caliber on the field. So, yeah, he could be the most dynamic talent, 3-down back. He's really great in pass protection. Had a really, I think Jermaine Grace came in on a blitz in the spring game, and he got stoned by Mark Walton, just absolutely shut him down on that blitz. So, yeah, running the ball, catching the ball, blocking for other guys. He was also one of the lead blockers on Cornelder's return at Duke that won that game. So he was out there for that. So, yeah, I mean, dynamic can do it all. So he's really good. Going to skip down to Joseph Yearby, who was a starter last year, had a 1,000-yard season last year, just over. He got it in the bowl game. So obviously a dynamic kind of a guy. I think he's more of a scat back kind of. He's trying to bulk up so he has more size. But, yeah, you look at him as a 3rd-down kind of back. But at the college level, he can play up a little bit, and he can run. He's running tougher on the inside than we've seen him run. So he has some quick juke moves, can catch the ball fairly well out of the backfield, had receiving touchdowns as both freshman and sophomore going into his junior year. So he's another talented running back, shared the backfield at Miami Central with Dalvin Cook in high school, was a starter there as well. So those are 2 guys from Dade County. Both Mark Walton went to Booker T. Washington, and Joseph Yearby went to Miami Central. Those are those homegrown guys, those homegrown skill players that everybody wants to go to the University of Miami. So right at the top of the running back rotation, boom, that's what you have. Gus Edwards is back. He's from New York. Big kid, 6'2.5", 240 pounds, running back. I mean, he's the big bruiser. That kind of he's the thunder to Yearby and Walton's lightning, if you will. So he was running hard in the spring. From the spring game, he looked really good. There were a couple of times when he was dancing a little bit in the backfield, but with the second offensive line that struggled a little bit, he kind of had to do some of those things. But if he can square his shoulders, if he can run downhill, stop trying to dance so much. Like Barry Sanders could get away with it because Barry Sanders is a once-in-a-lifetime talent. You got Reggie Bush could get away with it because Reggie Bush had that special kind of twitch also. There's few guys who can get away with dancing that much in the backfield where, going laterally side, because at the college level, if you go side to side, teams are going to get you. So you need to really find that hole and get up the field. And I think that Gus can do that. We're going to do the I formation a lot more. Mark Richt pro style offense is going to have fullbacks be a key component. So maybe he can follow his fullback and then just run that way. Or, and this is something I've seen some Canes fans talk about, our starting fullback, Gage Batten, who was a walk-on at Auburn, he came over and he was a walk-on here. He had a foot injury, so he did not play in the spring game. He missed like half the spring practices and things like that. So we're kind of cycling through and seeing who we can put at fullback. Now you have Chris Herndon, who's a tight end, but he can move all over the place. You have David Njoku, same thing, and those two are going to be on the field a lot, Herndon and Njoku, so learn those names. But and I know that they're tight ends, but I'm bringing them over here because they can play in the backfield. They can be, you know, in the eye or the offset eye or things like that. I'm interested to see if we can do that with Gus Edwards and put him at the fullback position, a la what the old teams, the 2000, 2001 teams did with Najee Davenport, who, again, 6'2.5", 6'3", 240 pounds, a big running back with skills. And you saw when he started a couple games, he played in the league. He started some games in the league, had a couple 100-yard games here and there. So obviously a running back, but he's big enough where, and if you block a little bit, the other backs are going to run. But now, and a Walton, an Edwards, and a Yearby, you know, in the backfield at the same kind of time, with putting him at the fullback position. That's something that I might be interested to see. So Yearby, Walton, and Edwards at the top of the running back rotation. They're among the best in the ACC.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've probably got amongst the strongest three deep at running back you can imagine across the country.
Yeah.
We don't know about Walton, so two deep then becomes an opportunity for somebody else to jump in there. You got a couple intriguing candidates to do just that.
Right. You have Trayon Gray, who's a true junior. He's from Miami Carroll City High School, so another Dade County player. He was a quarterback in high school, a quarterback, wide receiver, safety, you know, kind of the best player on the field. We're going to put him wherever we can use him at Carroll City. So transitioning to running back, which is where his skill set kind of fits, I think, best. Maybe we could see him in the return game. He's a big kid, you know, 6'2", 225-ish, almost 230, but he's one of the fastest players on the roster. And that's from, you know, coaches and players and observers alike. He has that fast twitch. Like he can get down the field. So, you know, maybe we see him in the return game a little bit. He's struggled with consistency, you know, reading his blocks and lowering his pad level. If you even look back at his high school tape, he runs very upright. It's almost like Forrest Gump. Like not the leg part, but the upper body part is like very upright when he runs. So that can be tough, you know, trying to go through a hole playing in the ACC. So if he can change his pad level a little bit and be more consistent with that, I think he can find a spot in the rotation. I don't know how many snaps are going to be there because you do have, you know, Yearby, Walton, and Edwards in front of him. Now, if Walton, for whatever reason, is not on the roster, and he moves up a little bit in the rotation area, then I could see him getting a little bit more. But he's a dynamic player, and we just have to find a way to utilize his speed the best way possible in limited snaps, because you're not going to want to pull any of those guys in front of him off the field too often just to give him a couple of carries, because he's good, don't get me wrong, but he's, you know, a second-tier kind of level player at Miami, at Miami, because he would start on a couple ACC teams, if we're being perfectly honest. The other player at the position is Travis Homer. He's the number 10 rated running back according to 24/7 Sports in the 2016 recruiting class. He actually just checked into his dorm yesterday on Saturday, May the 14th. He put that up on Twitter. His mom put that up on Twitter, pictures on campus and everything. So he is starting his classes on Monday the 16th. He's fully integrated then with the team and everything. So he's fast. He has moves. He's shifty. And the thing with him is, like I was talking about with Gus Edwards, who dances a little bit, Homer can stay at full speed but make moves going down the field, which is really interesting. You know, played against some fairly good competition in high school up at Oxbridge Academy in West Palm Beach. So another South Florida player, just a little bit further north than the Dade County guys. But playing against some very good competition up there, played very well. You know, put up some really good numbers, over 1,300 yards and like 18 touchdowns, I want to say, last year. Had a 98 and a 99-yard touchdown, which set new records for his high school's longest score. I think Oxbridge has had a football program for 3 or 4 years, so not super old, but I said this in recruiting, learn that name. Oxbridge Academy is trying to become the St. Thomas Aquinas of West Palm Beach. So a private school, fantastic facilities. Miami actually had the second scrimmage of the spring on April the 9th at Oxbridge Academy. That was the week before that we had the spring game in Lockhart Stadium in my Fort Lauderdale, excuse me. So, fantastic facilities, great coaching staff. They're pulling in players from all over that area. So that's going to be a top-notch team. You're going to hear more names from that school. But getting back to the Homer, he's a home run hitter. Like, not to use his name as a pun, but yeah, he is. I mean, he gets some space, and the kid's gone. So, I don't necessarily see him taking too many snaps this year. I would really like to see him get a red shirt. Again, this is pending Mark Walton being there. So then the four in front of him is Walton, Yearby, Edwards, and Gray. And then, maybe some Batten if he's back and healthy. Maybe, a couple other guys getting some time in the running back positions. Maybe a couple of the walk-ons. Again, if we're on the positive side of a blowout, they can come in as opposed to taking his red shirt. But, I was doing the math about it on Twitter a couple days ago or a couple weeks, but if Trayon Gray last year, again, a player with a lot of talent, had 32 carries in 2015, how many of those carries would have to go to Travis Homer to make burning his red shirt worth it? Like the cost-benefit analysis, because if you're getting 10 or 12 carries for a full year, I'm going to leave you on scout team. I'm going to redshirt you. 20 carries and 3 catches, maybe then, but still, unless those are coming in crunch time against Florida State, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, or whatever, I don't really see, even if you give all 30 of those carries and a couple catches to him and a couple of returns, I don't necessarily see a scenario where with the guys in front of him that, I'm not saying they're exactly the same as these guys because they all played in the league, but the Yearby, Walton, Edwards trio at the top is a lot like Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown and Brandon Jacobs when they were at Auburn. It's very similar to that. And I know people are going to say, hey, think about what I'm saying, because you got two moderately sized backs and then a really big back, very talented, light on his feet, can get up the field. So if you have a similar, and it might, and fine, okay, we'll even give them a step below the trio from Auburn. But you still have a trio at the top that's in that kind of conversation, and then a Gray at 4. I don't need to take this All-American kind of freshman and plug him in now. I can save him for next year. We might lose Yearby if he decides to come out. Edwards is a redshirt senior, so he's going to go, to the NFL draft or something, So you have those guys coming off the top. Now next year you lose those guys, and now you have a redshirt freshman Homer who's developed, knows his playbook and everything, and he can come in and he can play right away. Noshawn Moreno, when he was at Georgia under Mark Richt, did what as a freshman? Redshirted before he played, and he came out and had a 1,000-yard season his redshirt freshman year. So it can happen. So I'm really looking at Homer is a fantastic talent. I don't want to see him on my field this year, because I think those other guys in front of him can take that job. But you have guys in the rotation where we do have those options, either with or without Mark Walton, again, pending his situation. But, with Mark Walton in there, I want to see Travis Homer only in his jersey on game days with no pads because he's redshirting. If Walton, unfortunately, is not with the team, then maybe you move him up in the rotation and see Walton. But all 5 of those guys have a lot of talent, so I think the Miami's in a really good spot at running back.
And for any player, Cam, that's getting only 20 or 30 touches, they're not going to come in crunch time. If you're getting 20 or 30 touches over the course of 13 games, they're most likely going to be in the 3 or 4 touchdown victories against the lesser non-conference foes, most likely. And right. When somebody starts to describe somebody with an upright running style, typically the name that I hear get attached to that is Eric Dickerson. I thought that was coming, and then all of a sudden I hear Forrest Gump, and I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of a stretch. That'll be interesting to see this kid run.
Well, the thing that I do sometimes is, over-exaggerate for comedic effect. But when I said Forrest Gump, you knew what I meant.
Oh, I sure did. I had a visual right there. It was instant.
So I use my words to paint that picture, but obviously he doesn't run that upright, but in that same kind of style. So maybe in an athletic way, more like Eric Dickerson, we can take that.
Cam Underwood from State of the U, breaking down the running backs in Miami. Always love the personnel breakdown, Cam, and we'll have you back soon to hopefully find some hope along the offensive front.
Woo! Well, I'm going to pray about that so we can find that hope, but hopefully by the time that I get back, we found it.
All right, Cam. Have a good one, man.